Hello and welcome to Tap That MTG, the show where we tell you everything we know about Magic the Gathering that is probably wrong, but fun to talk about. I'm Leslie,
I'm Shauna.
and today we are bringing you another pre-con deep dive. We love to do these where we just
hmm
analyze. We're going to break down all the cards in this deck, talk about what the deck is meant to do, how you should use it wisely, and if you wait until the end, we will offer you some suggestions and tweaks for this
Yeah.
deck to hopefully make it even better. But Shauna's going to start with telling us what deck we're doing and what our commander is.
Yeah. Thank you. So we have this deck is called Call for Backup, and it is a pun that's intended because there is a new mechanic that is in this deck called Backup, and I'll explain that here in a second. So the first, our commander is a Bright Palm Soul Awakener, fun little fox shaman that has backup one. So what backup one is when this creature comes in, it can put you can put a 1/1 counter on it or preferably another creature, because when you put that counter onto another creature, that creature gains all the abilities of this card that's underneath the backup word. So that ability happens to be whenever this creature attacks, double the number of +1 counters on target creature. That creature can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less this turn. So Bright Palm has that ability, but with backup, you can also, on that turn when Bright Palm comes in, you can give a counter to another creature and give that ability for just that turn to that other creature. So it's a quick little buff up to your new to your old creatures from the new one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a cool little mechanic that copies abilities and gives counters, which this deck is about. Not surprising with green and white and red in it. So
Mm-hmm.
we've also got Shalaya Nalar is the other possible commander for this deck, and it is a 3/3 angel elf with Shalai, one of my favorite characters from Magic. Um, it has flying and vigilance, and whenever one or more +1 counters are put on a creature you control, Shalai and Halar deals that much damage to target opponent. So, depending on which direction you want to go, this might be another way to break down your opponent a little bit by doing lots and lots of +1 counter stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Just depends on
Leslie's
your style, right?
exactly. So Leslie's going to give us a little deck breakdown. Yeah.
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
like to look at the stats because we're nerds that way, and just look at kind of colors and mana curves. So if we look at our colors, we can see that 48% of this deck is green. A lot of that is mainly due to the fact that there's a lot of ramp in this deck to try and get you your mana quickly, and those are typically green. 34% of this deck is white and 18% is red. So we love these colors. I think this is our jam. This is kind of like the deck that both of us would build
Yeah.
if we were going to build a deck. As far as mana curve goes, we have an average of 3.5, which is really quite low. That being said, you can see that there are still quite a few in the 5, 6, and 7 range. We have, about 3 or 4 in the 1 mana cost, about 12 or 13 in the 2 mana cost. We're looking at about 17 in 3 mana cost, about 12 in the 4 mana cost, and then, of course, the rest are 5, 6, and 7. As far as types go, we can see that a lot of the cards are creature cards, and then there is creatures across the spectrum, and then our second highest is our instants. So that's going to be interesting to see when we break this down.
Mm.
When we look at the types of cards, 36% are creatures, 35% are land, and spells are 29%. So that's actually a little bit lower for land than we're used to seeing.
hmm
But we are going to analyze this and break it down for you in categories. And what are our categories and why do we use them, Shauna?
Yeah. So we like to use this little formula because it gives a good balance of what you need for a typical commander deck. So this little formula calls for about 15 ramp cards, and those are, your mana type stuff. 15 removal, because you got to have removal, whether it's board wipes or just individual removal, artifact removal, that sort of thing. 13 card draw is kind of recommended because you want to make sure you have lots of cards in hand, lots of choices. Your high impact cards, those are the cards that are going to win you the game. And take over the board, and those, about 12 of those. And then you want to have about 10 other cards that either support your high impact cards or just other cards on theme to, add to the fun of the deck, that sort of thing. And then about 34 lands. So Wizards usually puts in more lands than the 35 that are in this one, but that's where you can usually have a little bit of wiggle room as far as upgrades go. So, yeah.
Awesome. So the first section we'll talk about is all of our cards that have to do with ramp, mana generation, going to get all that land. As Shauna just mentioned, the formula that we use calls for 15. This deck has 13. So that is right on par. It's okay if it's below by a couple or above by a couple. Somewhere around 15 is where you want to be. Our first one is Fertilid for 3. It's a 0/0, but it comes in with 2 1/1 counters, and then you can just remove those counters, and target player searches their library for a basic land card, puts it onto the battlefield tapped. Now, with our new mechanic backup, you're going to be adding 1/1 counters to things, so this might be something that you want to choose to add another counter to, because then you can use that counter to continue to ramp if you need it. So.
Yeah, you'll notice that these mana dorks that we've got in here use the +1/+1 counter thing quite a bit here. Like Gyre Sage, it's a elf druid as well, 1/2 for 2 that has Evolve, which says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, if that creature has greater power or toughness than this creature, you get to put a counter on this creature. So, and you can, with that, you can then tap this and add a green mana for each +1 counter on it. So a really great little place to put your counters on if you need lots of green mana.
And Incubation Druid is a 2 mana 0/2, which is a great little mana, what they call dork. I don't know why they call them mana dorks, but whatever. Add 1 mana of any type that a land you control could produce, which is great because any color is fantastic. If Incubation Druid has a 1/1 counter on it, add 3 mana of that type instead. So good value there. Now this also has the ability of adapt, which you can pay 5 and adapt it. It's important to know that you probably don't want to put any counters on this one with your backup ability until you've adapted it, because if it has counters on it, you can't adapt it. So basically it says that on the card, if this creature has no 1/1 counters on it, put 3 1/1 counters on it instead. After that, put as many 1/1 counters on it as you like.
Yeah, and then we have Rishkar Pima Renegade. This one is really, really good. It's a 2/2 for 3, and when it enters the battlefield, you put 2 1/1 counters on each of up to 2 target creatures. And then the ability there is each creature you control with a counter on it can be tapped for green mana. So it makes anything you need to with counters on them into mana. So that's really going to be helpful and get you going really fast.
Wood Elves for 3 is a 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, you just get to search for a forest card, put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So yeah. It's a search with a body.
Yeah. And then, of course, it's got good old Cultivate because we have access to green. We can use Cultivate, which is a sorcery that lets you search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal them, and put 1 of them on the battlefield and 1 in your hand. So it's a really, really great way to ramp up.
Kodama's Reach does the same thing. We have 3 mana to search your library for 2 land cards. Basic, of course. Reveal those cards, put 1 onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand, then shuffle.
We may have a red card that's Path of the Pyromancer for 4 and a red. Looks like Chandra on there, maybe. You can discard all the cards in your hand and add red for each card discarded this way, then draw that many cards +1. This card also has Will of the Planeswalker. So starting with you, each player votes for Planeswalk or Chaos. So we're going to talk about Planeswalk. What the heck is this? So Planeswalk is a fun little variant of Commander that was out Planes Chase. I don't know if you've heard people talking about that. We've talked about it in our other videos as well. But basically, you've got another set of cards in on the table that are called planes. And the example that we have here is called Blood Hill Bastion. So each of the commander decks has a different set. These new commander decks has a different set of these planes. And what you do is you have a dice that goes with it, and they all come with the dice. And so the effect that's on the card, like this one that is whenever a creature enters a battlefield, it gains double strike and haste until end of turn. So this will affect everyone for the whole time that this plane is out. But you can roll that command dice and be able to change it if you want to. Or it has the chaos piece, which is the little strange symbol at the bottom there that says whenever you roll chaos, exile target non-token creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under your control. So if you roll that, then that takes effect. So this card that we were just talking about, the Will of the Planeswalker, starting with you, each player votes for Planeswalk. So Planeswalk is where you would change that card, or Chaos, which is the ability on the bottom. If Planeswalk gets more votes, you Planeswalk. If Chaos gets more votes, or the vote is tied, Chaos ensues. So there is, this is one of the cards that lets you do that. Or for each turn, you have the chance to roll the dice for free and follow what happens, or you can pay one more for each time the dice has already been rolled to try to Planeswalker have chaos happen again on your turn. So everyone can do that. Yeah, exactly. So hopefully that makes sense.
Clear as mud.
Yeah.
So we have a couple staples as well in this deck, Arcane Signet and Commander Sphere. They both add 1 mana of any color for all intents and purposes that you need in your commander's identity color. Commander Sphere has the additional benefit of allowing you to draw a card later on if you sacrifice it. So it's nice to see both options.
Yeah, and then we have 2 artifacts that are to do with this planes chase ability here. So Fractured Power Stone, you can tap it for mana, or you can tap it to roll the planar die, and you have to activate that only as a sorcery. So yeah, that planar die thing has to be a sorcery. That's the other thing I forgot. And then Ichor Elixir, which is new for this set. Every one of the commander decks has this. It's a little artifact that says if you would roll 1 or more planar dice, instead roll that many planar dice +1 and ignore 1. Or you can tap it for 2 colorless mana. So that's pretty handy. Yeah.
And the card that everyone loves in every commander deck is Soul Ring, and that one taps for 2. If you get this turn 1, everyone targets you, and so, but it's fun. It's a good deck, and it should be in every commander deck.
Yeah. Then we're on to our removal section. So the formula calls for 15. This deck has about 12. The first one we have is the Constable of the Realm. He's grabbing him by the scruff. And for 4 and a white, it's a 3/3 with Renown 2. So this is an ability that says when this creature deals combat damage to a player, if it isn't renowned, you put 2 1/1 counters on it and it becomes renowned. So this is a great way to get more counters out. And then it says whenever 1 or more +1 counters are put on the Constable of the Realm, exile up to 1 other target non-land permanent until Constable of the Realm leaves the battlefield. So the more counters you can put on him, the better. So there's other ways to do that. And every time you do that, you get to go and grab somebody by the scruff and exile them.
And Elite Scale Guard for 5 is a little 2/3. When it enters the battlefield, you get to bolster. So basically, you're going to bolster 2, which means choose a creature with the least power and toughness. So you don't get a choice there. You just have to look at which one has the least toughness among creatures you control, and then you get to put 2 counters on it. And then whenever a creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it attacks, you get to tap target creature defending player controls. And remember, with your backup ability, you're going to be putting counters on things anyway. So these cards are definitely taking advantage of having 1/1 counters on things and not necessarily making them big, but they're going to be good because they have a counter on them.
Yeah. Then we have the Falconwrath Exterminator. It's a 1/1 for 2, little red vampire archer that says whenever it deals damage to a player, you put a 1/1 counter on it. And you can pay 3, and the exterminator deals damage to any target creature equal to the number of 1/1 counters on it. So it's a great little removal threat sitting there. You can do that 2 in red as many times as you need to, whenever you want. So they're not going to like it when you have 3 mana sitting there available. They'll be a little concerned.
Yep. And then Triskelion for 6 is a 1/1. Well, why would you pay 6 for a 1/1? Well, let me tell you. It enters the battlefield with 3/1/1 counters on it. So it's not actually a 1/1. It's actually a 4/4. And then you can remove a 1/1 counter from it, and it deals 1 damage to any target. Now, that doesn't mean you have to remove 1 at a time. If you need to remove 4, you can remove 4. If you add some counters because of backup, then that will be great as well.
Yeah. Dramoka's Command. It is a little lovely instant for green and white that says choose 2. Prevent all combat damage. Target instant or sorcery spell would deal this turn. Or target player sacrifice an enchantment. Or put a 1/1 counter on target creature. Or target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. So it's an instant speed. Have it do 2 things that you need at any time.
Choices. And I mean, what's better than giving someone an elephant? Everyone wants an elephant. Generous gift for 3. You get to destroy target permanent, and its controller creates a 3/3 green elephant creature token.
Then we have a little card from, I think this was from Hour of Devastation, I think, originally. So these cards that you see with the half and half like this, with 1 vertical and 1 horizontal. This one, you play the heaven part first. So that's an instant. It deals X damage to each creature with flying. And then once it's in your graveyard, it's turned sideways. And that is, it has Aftermath, the earth side, which means that you can cast this spell from your graveyard, and then you have to exile it after that. But earth deals X damage to each creature without flying. So whenever you need to do that. So it's sitting in your graveyard on its side as an exiled card that you get to play. And then once you've done that, it's done.
Yeah. Hindervines for 3. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn by creatures with no 1/1 counters on them. So this is in the removal because your creatures, of course, will have 1/1 counters on them. So if they go ahead and block thinking that they're going to, get some stuff in or kill some of your creatures, you can play this, and then you can take out their creatures and they don't do anything to yours. So
yeah. Inscription of Abundance. This is a good little instant as well that has 1 in a green and has kicker on it as well, which is, I'll explain that in a second. So you choose 1. If this spell was kicked, you get to choose any number of them instead. So there you've got your choices there. Put 2 +1 counters on target creature. Target player gains X life, where X is the greatest power among creatures they control. And target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. So you're going to want to try to kick this. So what that is that you pay the 1 in the green, and you have to pay the 2 in the green as well. So a total of 5. And then you can do all of those things. So you're going to try to do that if you can. But if you can't, though, you just choose 1 and it's still pretty good.
Yeah. Return to Nature also has choices. As an aside, before I explain this card, it's interesting because everyone's always like, black has the best removal, but really green has a lot of good removal because it has a lot of artifact enchantment removal. You have lots of fight effects, and then you have does damage based on its power. So, I might just be biased and really like green. I don't know why everyone hates it, but Return to Nature for 2 gives you the choice of one of these: destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, and exile target card from a graveyard. So all great choices.
Yeah.
And it's a common.
Yeah. Then there's good little Swords to Plowshares, of course, for 1 white, an instant that says exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power. It's a pretty good little card.
Give them some life, but oh well.
Yeah.
Ion Storm for 3 isn't something you see very often, but it's an enchantment. So it just sits there on the battlefield until you need it. And then you can pay 2 to remove a 1/1 counter or a charge counter from a permanent that you control, and it will deal 2 damage to any target. So now your little 1/1 counters can take something out, do that final damage. Lots of options for being tricky with it as well. So it's fun.
Then we're into the card draw and tutor section. So this deck is lacking a little bit here. So we've got the formula calls for 13, and this deck kind of only has 3. It's also got Command Sphere, which has card draw in it as well as being a mana rock. But so maybe this is somewhere you want to tweak it a little bit. So we've got Armorcraft Judge, which is a 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card for each creature you control with +1 counter on it. So that is a really good card draw, but it's only the one time. So
Mindless Automaton for 4. When it enters the battlefield, put 2 1/1 counters on it. Then you can pay 1, discard a card, and put a 1/1 counter on Mindless Automaton. And then you can remove 2 1/1 counters from Mindless Automaton and draw a card. So again, this is an ongoing that you can use. Continue to put counters on it. Use your backup. That type of thing. But it's okay.
Inspiring Call, it's an instant for 2 and a green that says draw a card for each creature you control with 1/1 counter on it. Those creatures gain indestructible to end turn, so that's really nice too. So attacking and drawing cards would be really great.
Yeah, well, and in this one too, I mean, it's great, but it's only once. And you could end up with a mitt full of cards in your hand that maybe you can't keep them all. So
yeah, exactly.
definitely tweak that section. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Anyways, on to our high impact cards. Now, they leaned in to the high impact cards in this deck. This is a very great deck as far as cards go. And it might be because we're biased and we really like these cards. So we were like, yeah, that's awesome. We've seen a lot of them work. Our formula calls for 12. The deck has 17 in our opinion. Champion of Lambolt, of course, is prime high impact card. For 3, you get a 1/1. But creatures with power less than Champion of Lambolt's power can't block creatures you control. So now you're taking their creatures out of the equation as far as blocking. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you get to put another counter on it. Plus, you can put counters on it with your backup or other abilities. So you're going to want to focus on this one. And people will try and take it out as well. So, yeah.
Conclave Mentor, it's a 2/2 for 2. And if one or more 1/1 counters will be put on a creature you control, that many +1 are put on that creature instead. So extra counters on top of that. And when this one dies, you gain life equal to its power. So it's a great way to stay alive until you can eliminate everyone.
So glad they put that one in, the double the counters.
Yeah.
Conclave Sledge Captain, another little elephant. For 6, it's a 4/4. Now this is a new one. This one has backup, backup, backup. There's 3 instances that backup will trigger. Of course, again, backup is whenever this creature enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on target creature. So you're going to pick 3 different creatures, and then they are going to gain trample. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, put that many 1/1 counters on it. So gonna double the amount of counters on it. They're gonna have trample. If they've blocked some of it, then it won't necessarily double, but however much damage it does, it's going to put that many 1/1 counters on it. So
it's definitely hammer.
And I will point out, it does say it's not gains the following ability. It does say following abilities. So just watch your cards and make sure you read them fully because you get both of those abilities.
Yeah. Backup 3, when this creature enters the battlefield, put 3 counters on something. So you can put this is the Emergent Woodworm. It's a 4/4 for 6 and a green. It's crazy. Whenever this creature attacks, you look at the top X card of your library where X is the power. You may put a permanent card with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. This is he could really win you the game, this one.
Yeah. And really this is a card draw tutor card as well. So but it's just so high impact. And so anytime you can find high impact cards that will fit into the other categories, that's great as well. And this is one that Wizards created just for that. So that's wonderful. Enduring Scale Lord. I love this card because it's a dragon and it's a Celestia dragon, green white. So for 6, you get a 4/4 with flying. Whenever one or more 1/1 counters is put on another creature you control, you put a 1/1 counter on Enduring Scale Lord. So as you put counters on other things, you get to put a counter on this. Now it's one or more, so it's not. It's for each creature, but if something gets 3, like the worm we just talked about, it doesn't get 3. It still only gets 1.
Yeah. Forgotten Ancient is a 0/3 for 4. This is a really, really powerful card too, in my opinion. Whenever a player casts a spell, so anyone, you may 1/1 counter on the Forgotten Ancient. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, you may move any number of those counters from this onto other creatures. So wherever you need them, how many you need them, take them and put them somewhere else. And that's going to be crazy on this in this deck.
Well, and using that with Enduring Scale Lord as well, if you're moving a counter, then you're putting a counter on another creature.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
that would trigger Enduring Scale Lord as well. Not just Genesis Hydra. I like this one as well. It is a 2 mana cost and X for a 0/0. But whenever you cast the spell, you reveal the top X cards of your library. You put a non-land permanent card with a mana value of X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Then shuffle the rest into your library. Genesis Hydra enters the battlefield with X number one counters on it. I don't know why I said it as number one. But I did. So X can be whatever you want. So you have to pay the 2 green and then whatever other mana you feel like investing. If it's 6 or 5 or whatever, then X is 5. And you just put 5 in there wherever it says X.
Oh, crazy. All right. Good Fortune Unicorn, a 2/2. Everybody loves this unicorn that plays Celestia, that's for sure. So 1 and a green and a white. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on it. So many ways that's going to be helpful in this deck. It's crazy.
Guardian Scale Lord for 6 is a 3/4. It has backup, so that's a new card. It has flying, and whenever this creature attacks, return target non-land permanent card with a mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is this creature's power. So it gets both of those abilities. Whatever creature you put your 1/1 counter on, and gets both of those abilities as well. So
yeah. Hamza the Guardian of Arashin, 5/5 for 6, basically. Little Elephant Warrior. This one says the spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it. So potentially only 2. Probably only 2. Creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each creature you control with a +1 counter on it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep. So there's some ramp. Guardian Scale Lord is some tutoring.
Yeah. And remember, that can be applied to the X costs as well.
Yes.
So your X costs can be
just automatically
really,
1 extra.
really big.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Colonian Hydra for 5, 3 and 2. Hydras always come in as 0/0s, and so this one is a trample. It enters the battlefield with 4 1/1 counters on it, so it comes in as a 4/4. And whenever it attacks, you double the number of counters. See, I just thought of another one that we could put in, a Hydra that we could put in that does the same thing on each creature you control. So this one gives 1/1 counters on each creature, double the number of 1/1 counters on each creature you control. So that's going to make your stuff really big, really fast, and you have a lot of tramplers. So
yeah. Like this one, the Mana Gorger Hydra for 3. It's a 1/1 that says whenever a player casts a spell, you put a 1/1 counter on Mana Gorger Hydra. That's any player casting spells all around the table. This gets big fast. We've both played with this card. It gets huge.
Mikaeus the Lunarch for X and white. It enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters on it. So again, you choose what X is. Then once it's on the battlefield, you can tap it and put a 1/1 counter on it. Or you can tap it to remove a 1/1 counter from it and put a 1/1 counter on each other creature you control. So you could just keep pumping 1/1 counters into this one and then start putting 1/1 counters on everything.
Slurk, all ingesting Ooze for 5 and a green. It enters the battlefield with 5+1 counters on it. And whenever it or another creature you control dies, if it had a 1/1 counter on it, you put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control that has a 1/1 counter on it. What? Lots
Which
of
is
little ways.
probably going to be
It's
everything.
going to be everything. So it has partner as well. So you could use it as a commander with another partner card if you wanted to.
Sunscorch Regent is another card that everyone loves in a counter deck for 3 and 2 white. It's a 4/3 with flying, and whenever an opponent casts a spell, you get to put a 1/1 counter on Sunscorch Regent and gain a life. So you just keep some every time they cast something.
Very
Oh, did
annoying.
you cast something? Don't point it out. Just quietly do it, because then everyone will be like, "What are you doing over there so much?" And then, like 2 turns later, they'll be like, "How is that got 7 counters on it?" Stop casting spells.
She's speaking from experience, folks. She does this.
Because Shauna does it.
No, you play that card. Oh gosh. Strionic Resonator. It is a. I'm amazed that this is in this deck, but it really needs to be. It's a 2-cost artifact that says you can pay 2 and tap it to copy target triggered ability you control, and you may choose new targets for the copy. So any of those little triggered abilities, like the things like backup and that sort of thing, you can use this Strionic Resonator to copy that and make some more shenanigans happen. So you got to watch your triggers and think about this a little bit.
Yeah. Uncivil Unrest is a 5 mana cost enchantment. Non-token creatures you control have riot.
Yeah, that's a static ability right there.
That is a static ability right there, because it just sits there on the battlefield. Riot is whenever they enter, with your choice of a 1/1 counter or haste. You only get to make that when they enter. So that's up to you. If a creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage instead. Ooh. So it's not the same as double strike. It just doubles the damage. So it would do, if it's a 3/3, then it would do 6 damage. Or 3/3. It's a 2/2 with a 1/1 counter. Then it would do 6 damage right at first at hit.
Yeah. So mean. Then we're into the other cards on theme. So these are things that are going to help you win the game, help your, in this case, get lots of counters and that sort of thing. So the formula calls for 10. The deck has about 14. Kind of makes sense. So the first one we have here is Abzan Battle Priest. That's a 3/2 for 3 and a white that has Outlast. And that little ability says you pay 1 white. Which means that you pay the white, tap this guy, and you put a 1/1 counter on this creature. But you can only do that as a sorcery. And then each creature you control with +1 counter on it has lifelink. So this is a great little tool to help you stay alive. And it's going to really help.
Abzan Falconer also has Outlast. So same thing. You may pay 1 and tap it to put a 1/1 counter on it, and then Outlast only as a sorcery. Each creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it has flying.
Yeah.
So remember, there was a removal card back when we were talking about removal that was destroy all creatures without flying. Make sure this is on the battlefield first.
Yeah. Then Alharu, Solemn Ritualist, something like that. Anyways, it's for 4 and a white, a 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 2 other target creatures. And then whenever a non-token creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it dies, you get to create a little spirit creature token with flying. So it just helps you stay alive. More creatures.
Stay alive. Another great support card is Brawn for 4. It's a little 3/3 with trample, but as long as Brawn is in your graveyard, so it's okay if it dies, and you control a forest, which you will, creatures you control have trample. All creatures.
Yeah, that's always good. This Death Greeter's Champion, it is a 2/1 for 2 and a red that has dash. So what dash is you pay that dash cost and you cast that spell, and then what happens with it is when it's it gains haste, and then it's returned from the battlefield to the owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So it just comes in and out, does a job in and out. But what's so nice about this one is that it has backup 1, so and double strike. So what you can do is use that backup ability over and over again, and giving something else double strike constantly. They're going to want to deal with that somehow.
Yeah.
But it's hard to deal with it when it's in your hand.
Exactly. It costs 1 more, but that dash in this deck is so, so important because of the enter the battlefield. I would almost always play it for its dash cost if you can.
You want to use it over and over again.
Yeah. Flame Rush Rider. It's a 3/3 for 5, and whenever it attacks, create a token that's a copy of another attacking creature, and that's tapped and attacking. Exile the token at the end of combat. So again, this one has dash, so you can play it over and over and over again, and just give it some haste, so you can use it right away.
Yeah.
If you copy a creature that has backup, then it's creating a token of that creature, which enters the battlefield, and then the backup will trigger as well. So this deck is going to have like a lot of, as we talked about, trigger. So you're going to have to kind of watch, like, okay, what's happening when this comes into the battlefield.
Yeah, exactly. High Sentinels of Arashin. That's a 3/4 for 3 and a white. Has flying. When it gets it gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it. So that could potentially be very big. And you can pay 3 and a white and put a 1/1 counter on target creature. So it's a great way to spread out some counters. And then this guy gets bigger, and it's flying.
Yep. Flying. Great. Juniper Order Ranger. We put this in all of our counter decks and pretty much all our Celestia decks for 3 and a white and a green. It's a 2/4, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you get to put a 1/1 counter on that creature and a 1/1 counter on Juniper Order Ranger. So this one definitely could be in the high impact card as far as being able to trigger on a regular basis. But it's a 2/4 for 5, so it might be a little bit conditional.
Krenko, Tin Street Kingpin. This is a great card in this deck. It's 2. It's a 1/2 for 3, but whenever it attacks, you put a 1/1 counter on it, then create the number of 1/1 goblin creature tokens equal to its power. So you can get a little bit out of control there pretty quickly.
Mirror Style Master for 6. It's a 3/3, but it has backup 1. And then whenever this creature attacks, for each attacking modified creature, which I'll explain in a second, that you control, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of that creature. So everything tapped and attacking is going to get a copy of it made if it's modified. So what is modified? If it has an equipment on it, if it has an aura on it, or if it has a counter on it. Those are considered modifications. So of course, counters is how you're modifying your things in this deck. But basically everything that's attacking and modified is going to get this ability one other thing is going to get this ability, and you're going to be able to attack with it right away because it's been on the battlefield. And then because this also has that ability, you'll be able to do it again the next time. So
crazy. Pride Malkin, it's a 2/1, little 2 and a green, and it says when it enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control, and each creature you control with +1 counter on it has trample. So its main job is to give all that stuff trample for you.
Yeah. Restoration Angel for 4 is a 3/4. It has flash, it has flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you may exile target non-angel creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. So this deck doesn't have, in my opinion, and again, we didn't tweak with it, but whatever. This is what we would call a flicker ability. You'll hear a flicker ability. So flash means you can cast it at any speed, so instant speed, sorcery speed, whatever you need. And basically you're going to take something off the battlefield and then return it to the battlefield under your control. So any enter the battlefield effects like backup, or when this enters the battlefield, will trigger as well. So pick something that you're going to get a good benefit from. Now you are exiling it, and when you exile something, you lose the counters on it. So if it already has, 20 counters on it, don't remove it from the battlefield just to make it, unless you absolutely need to,
Yeah, unless you need to
so
save
that you
it.
can make that, save it, or pick something that you're not putting counters on, that you want to flicker. So
Yeah,
that's probably why they didn't put a ton of flicker in this deck, because you're going to lose your 1/1 counters if you start
exactly.
moving things back and forth out of the battlefield.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Semester's End, it's a 3 and a white instant that says exile any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers you control at the beginning of your next end step. Return each of them to the battlefield under its owner's control. Each of them enters the battlefield with an additional 1/1 counter on it, though, if it's a creature, an additional loyalty counter on it if it's a planeswalker.
Mm-hmm.
So this one helps you at that situation a little bit. The Leslie was just talking about, but it only comes back in with 1 counter. But again, just depends on what you want to do there, and if you're using lots of enter the battlefield triggers and that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And then Together Forever for 2. This card is all about me and Shauna. We're going to be together forever, and we support each other. So
Yeah,
it has the
that's right.
port 2, put a 1/1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. So that doesn't mean you can put 2 on 1. You have to pick 2 separate creatures, and then they each get +1/+1 counter on them.
Mm-hmm.
You can also pay 1 and choose target creature with a counter on it. And when that creature dies this turn, return that card to its owner's hand. So this is a great little enchantment to have on the battlefield to protect those things
Mm-hmm.
from board wipes. If you have the mana up, and you think, you know what, a board wipe's probably coming pretty soon, keep your mana up, because you can do that as many times as you need. If you need to save 5 creatures, then you
Mm-hmm.
can pay 5 and return those creatures that have counters back to your hand and recast them again if you need
Yeah,
to.
do also silly stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
that brings us to the tweak section. So thank you for hanging out with us this long.
Mm-hmm.
We've got some ideas that might improve this deck a little bit. One of the things we thought right away is let's look at some of these new backup cards that have come out. So the
Mm-hmm.
first one we have is Boonbringer Valkyrie. It's a 4/4 for 3 and a 2 white that has backup 1. And it has flying first strike lifelink. So this card can do a lot of work for you, giving that great big 2020 Hydra
Mm-hmm.
flying all of a sudden, and lifelink. Yeah, it's going to come out of nowhere, and they're going to cry.
Mm-hmm. And not to mention these cards that have backup on them, they also have those abilities staying on. So
Yeah,
then you have a 4/4
yeah,
angel that has flying first strike lifelink as well in the battlefield.
it's nice.
Another one that had backup that we loved was Doomscar Warrior for 4. It's a 4/3. It has trample and when it backup 1. And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or battle, which is just another type of card that you can attack, look at that many cards from the top of your library. You may reveal a creature card or a land card from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest at the bottom of your library in random order. So this is a good example of something that will get you some card draw or get you to look through your deck and put
Mm-hmm.
something in your hand. Also has backup, so it's on theme. So this would be a great add.
Yeah, for sure. Fearless Scald. This is a little 3/2 for 5 that has backup 1 and double strike. So this could potentially be a really good card by itself, but plus you're also giving one of your other creatures when it comes in that double strike, which can really end the game for you
Mm-hmm.
if you want. Yeah.
And then Mirror Shield Hoplite for 2. It's a little 2/2. It doesn't have backup, but it helps you with your backup. With Vigilant, it has Vigilance. And whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a backup ability, you get to copy that ability. So um, that's the backup ability. And then you may choose new targets for that copy. This ability triggers only once each turn. So if it's backup 1, then you would then trigger it, basically give it another backup 1. And then you'd get 2 creatures with
Yeah.
those abilities.
Awesome.
So many abilities just being thrown around.
Yeah, exactly. Valdarin Thrillseeker. This is a 1/1 vampire warrior for 2 in a red that has backup 2. And you can pay 1 and sacrifice this creature. It deals damage equal to its power to any target. So
Mm-hmm.
um, that could be really useful, as well as a little bit of removal for you.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And then some cards that we thought might be great for card draw are acrobatic maneuvers. It's an instant. Exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control and draw a card. Remember, we talked about flickering, so there might be something that you want to enter the battlefield again. So this
Mhm.
would be a good card for that, as well as allowing you to draw a card.
Yeah. Ambitious Assault. This is a nice little instant that buffs up your creatures all of a sudden, +2/+0 until end of turn. And if you control a modified creature, you get to draw a card. So it's a really great way to draw a card and buff up your team as you're attacking.
Some ongoing card draw that is
Yeah.
great for
Yeah.
pretty much any green commander deck is Beast Whisperer for 4. It's a 2/3, and whenever you cast a creature spell, you get to
Yeah.
draw a card.
Yeah, it's a great fit for this deck. Bonder's Enclave is a little land that taps for colorless and also has this ability where you can pay 3, draw a card, and activate it. You have to do that only if you have a creature with power 4 or greater, but you're going to have that with all the +1 counters that you're throwing around.
Yeah. Chronicler of Heroes is 3 for a 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card. If you control a creature with a 1/1 counter on it, which you will.
So that's a great little card to flash in and out, right?
Yes. Don't worry about putting counters on it. Just keep flickering it.
You're just using it to draw cards. Colossal Majesty. This is a great little enchantment. We like this one. For 2 and a green at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. So this is kind of it's a cheap, quick little addition to this deck that would really, really help you with that card draw piece.
Yeah, and Garruk's Uprising is another one
Same.
along that same vein. 3 mana cost. When it enters the battlefield, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you get to draw a card. It gives all your creatures trample, which is great.
Yeah.
And then whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you also get to draw a card. So ongoing card draw. A reminder that when something enters with counters, that counts towards its power and toughness. So even if it's a 2/2, but it comes in with 2 counters, it's now power 4. So that would trigger this Garruk's Uprising. That's officially the last tweaks that we have. However, I think a few things that, and you probably thought of things, but we didn't put Shalai in there. We didn't put the Ozolith in there. So there's lots of great additions to help with 1/1 counters. The reason we didn't go all out with those is because this deck actually is pretty good on its own. So we always recommend play with the deck first. See what you like, see what you feel it's missing. If you like to lean into 1/1 counters, then tweak that way. If you feel that you're missing card draw, then tweak that way. Obviously, you wouldn't just take out a whole bunch of cards and put all of these ones in.
Right on. So thanks for watching. That brings us to the end of our video. If you want to hang out with us, you can find us on YouTube and Twitch and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. We would love to hear how you would change this deck. What card draw ideas do you have that might help this one? And that's it for this time. We'll see you next time. In the meantime,
tap those magic cards and have fun doing it. Talk to you later, guys.
Bye.